Money never sleeps, pal.
Hey there, this is Pete Townsend from Norio Ventures, and welcome to Money Never Sleeps, a podcast that looks inside the head of entrepreneurs and at the crossover of startups, enterprise, finance, technology, and life as we know it. This episode of Money Never Sleeps is sponsored by PAT FinTech, the training partner that demystifies fintech and digital finance for financial services professionals. We've got Elisabeth Dana on the show this week, who is the founder and CEO of Infinity Circle, launching in 2021 as a global digital and real-world platform that brings together like-minded entrepreneurs, investors, and game changers to improve your relationship with money and make investing a fun feature of your life. Although I was in the investment funds industry for a very long time, I only began looking at the wealth management sector a few years ago as a market segment ripe for a rethinking of how they do things. So when Elisabeth's colleague Venu reached out to me last month, he sparked an interest. With that, let's spark this one up and get going with Elisabeth Dana from Infinity Circle on this week's episode of Money Never Sleeps.
Money never sleeps, pal.
Here we go again. We're on today with Elisabeth Dana, founder of Infinity Circle. Before founding Infinity Circle in 2018, Elisabeth's career in wealth management and private banking brought her to Banque Leumi, Barclays, and Signia. With that super high-level intro, welcome to the show, Elisabeth.
Thank you, Pete. Thank you for having me today.
Awesome. Great to have you here, Elisabeth. So you and I connected after I met Venu from your team through the Diffuse Network out of Chicago. And it just always amazes me that it's such a small world, especially when you're in this space of wealth management, digital finance, capital markets. It's amazing how people connect in this space, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. You're right. It is a very small industry. And, today with the tools we have and the education we have, we are all connected.
Absolutely. And I know that Venu will definitely be listening to this. So shout out to Venu and thank you for bringing this all together. So I gave you that, the quick intro, but for all of our listeners, just to bring everybody up to where you are, can you just share your backstory and how you got to this point and also about why specifically you?
It's a very good question, Pete. Thank you. Listen, I've been in the industry for my whole working life, so for coming on to 20 years. Started in Paris and the bulk in London, though I have education from the University of Chicago. We just mentioned Chicago. And, I was fortunate to be in top tier banks and to get the exposure and high level practice in wealth management, asset management in big banks with, surrounded by extremely smart people and dealing with very interesting entrepreneurial clients, whether I was, I started banking SMEs and then I over time moved on to wealth management, basically helping the owners of these small businesses manage both their corporate assets and their personal assets. And my passion has always been, throughout these 20 years, my clients and private clients in particular, people. And, asset management, wealth management is really a people's business. And so I was very fortunate to be, when I was at Barclays Wealth, to have this amazing platform to evolve my practice. And 4 years ago, the landscape in banking changed a lot out of the 2008-2009 crisis. And I decided that I wanted to contribute to my industry and to shape the practice, and that in big banks, that was never going to happen. I knew 16 years on that I had to, in view of my personality, take everything I had been exposed to and use it to shape my industry. And that's what I did. 4 years ago, I left the bank. I did a stop in a multifamily office called Signia, you mentioned at the start, which, gave me additional knowledge to create a bespoke platform for wealth management. What was very important for me at the time, still is now, is beyond the fact that I wanted to create a business from the ground up and have an entrepreneurial experience. That is one aspect, but the most important aspect is I wanted to build a wealth management capability based on clients' needs. and not on financial institutions' need.
Yeah, I'm with you. I worked on this a couple of years ago with some folks where we were trying to get back to the first principle of wealth management, right? Which is to protect and grow people's wealth, right? And can you peel away everything else and get back right to that first principle?
Exactly. It's not about short-term profit. It's not about how many financial products you're selling. It's not about how many clients you talk to about a specific private equity deal that the bank has on its books. This is not wealth management. Wealth management is about getting to know your clients sufficiently that you can guide them through the pitfalls of wealth management, and assessing the paths that are appropriate for them. And each client is different, truly is different.
Absolutely. And I all of this resonates with me. And the thing that I think we will talk about, and we will get to this during this discussion, is the scalability of all that, right? And making that available and accessible on a much wider basis. As you and I have talked about, I'm now on the outside looking back in, and I can see just how old school the majority of wealth managers are. And it's not their fault. It's just the nature of the demographic that they cater to. And this isn't me being ageist. This is just being how an industry has developed and how it's gone over the years. Now, there are some upstarts going in a new digital direction. And obviously, knowing that a core part of what you're doing is to make wealth management truly digital, right? But you can be digital without being transformational, right? And there's some concepts around that. Can you tell us how Infinity Circle will be both digital and transformational?
Absolutely. Well, the premise of building Infinity Circle is to strike the right balance between old and new, between the knowledge and the fundamentals of wealth management, which will be, the same in big banks, and which are, a modern finance theory, but to do it in a truly digital way. Now, you can be digital and not transformational. In fact, big banks, they have such heavy structures and they have such legacy technology systems that they're not nimble, they're not adaptable, they can't truly innovate, because they have their legacy and they have their processes and they have their structure. In my mind, to be truly digital and transformational, you need to really start from scratch. You need to redefine the framework. It's very difficult. And I'm not even talking about the lack of independence of big banks, which makes it very difficult to be innovative. Innovation rarely comes from the establishment. And in some ways you can consider, the big banks being the financial establishment, the way things have been done for 300 years. So legacy systems in big banks, the culture makes that environment kind of the contradiction to transformation.
I'm with you. Okay. And I'm thinking about an email I sent to someone yesterday where they asked me about digital transformation is far more about transformation than it is about digital, right? And I point to DBS in Singapore, the bank there that is always held up as the poster child for digital transformation. And the email that I sent to someone giving them an example of this focused on the people transformation, right? And that was their big first part of it, was we need to get people thinking differently. So what I'm thinking now is that at the startup level, if you're starting a wealth management business with already that cultural identity of what we need to infuse this business with from a mission and values perspective in order to identify with customers, that, like you said, starting from scratch, that can be a powerful proposition for having the right culture in place to being able to build a truly transformational wealth management business. Am I on to something here?
To something. I think it's transformational is all about the mindset, and it's all about, how you model your proposition. In my mind, if you model your proposition on the clients, your target clients, younger, tech native, very much 21st century, and not the banking system of the 19th or 20th century. If you model and you have the right mindset, you can be transformational. You're nailing the topic.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. But I think about these things a lot. Like I said, a couple years ago, trying to peel it right back to the core parts of wealth management and just thinking about, you mentioned the millennial segment there. I was chatting with someone a few weeks ago about not even the millennial generation, but the one after that, or Generation Z, and putting it back into my American accent, Generation Z, that a lot of folks in that generation, when they have an extra 500 or 1,000 perhaps left over, because I think, the whole smashed avocado thing is just so overcooked. It's really about smashed peas, apparently, these days. But I eat the avocado too. So anyway, they may be just as likely to open up their Revolut account and pop it into 500 pounds worth of Bitcoin than they are to open up their Revolut account and pop it into 500 pounds worth of, say, an ETF, right? Or something like that. How do you kind of corral that younger generation to get them interested in saving in a way that is thinking long term, right? What's the idea there?
I think the answer lies in education. In the Western world, we don't have financial or money education as part of the regular school education, or and yet it's such an important skill that will dictate so many things in one's adult life. So I think it's all about giving access to information, but also through experiences. There's a lot of information out there. It's not about the quantity. Of the super important point of any wealth management format for the next generation is to educate that audience, both empowering that audience to be able to know how to manage money.
Based upon where you guys are right now in terms of your development life cycle of the overall business, I kind of know where you are from the perspective of targeting specific segments, right? And there's different messages for each of those segments. And I think you're hitting the nail on the head by saying that, we need to remove the noise, right? That's out there, and just try to find the right demographics, or find the right demographics and find the right triggers in order to bring them on board, right?
And present the information in a way that's compatible to today's world. We have now a very, very short attention span. Some say, 15 seconds is what we would give our attention to per topic. You realize how short that is. So it's really understanding the approach of that generation and making it accessible and very simple, reducing the noise, taking some of the jargon away. It's basically taking out of this elitist mindset a skill that should be accessible to the many.
On that educational point, I think I've shared with you that I come from a family of educators. I've got a great respect for those who clearly have a strong belief in the power of education. Shout out to both of my sisters who are both professors back in the United States. Tell me about how important your education experience has been to your life's work, because taking a look back at your profile, I can see quite a few entries on there for the different programs and universities and even leadership programs that you took part in over the years.
Well, absolutely. Well, listen, I subscribe to my own theory. So, education is not just important for my target audience. Education for me is the key. So I went 8 years to university, to the point where, my mother told me at one point, do you ever plan on kind of actually working at some point? So I did undergrad in journalism and political science. You would say totally unrelated to what I do today. Actually not, because people, journalism, politics, all these are people skills. It's the world of men interacting and women interacting. So actually, I pull on that education all the time when I communicate, when I interact with people, when I talk to clients, you learn how to listen, very important skill in this industry. To spot trends, also very important. And also, I mentioned I did a 2-year stop in Chicago, where I pursued an MBA at Chicago Booth, and and it's a very kind of quant type of MBA. I use the theory every day as a bank. I've been, since I graduated in 2008, been using modern finance theory every day, but more specifically, behavioral finance and behavioral psychology, sciences that hugely beneficial to what I'm doing. And, behind, and all this science is behind modern day marketing. It's behind the building AI. It's observing consumer behaviors. It's interpreting the data. It's actually building a business based on data, not just on a hunch or on an instinct or on what we think we know about the industry or about the past or the track record. Or it's really using the information that's readily available to us today to shape a business and to service clients.
I just off a call with a startup I'm working with just before we recorded this, Elisabeth, and I saw the bottom of one slide. You had one slide up on the screen share. Bottom of the slide said 2021, focus on creating the feedback loop for engaging with the market. And I'm like, yes, exactly. You need to create that feedback loop and have that strongly in place. And like you said, it's data driven. It's really important. All that data is available if you can actually put the framework in place from the start in order to measure how the market is perceiving what you're doing, how they're engaging, how they're not engaging, why they're not engaging, or why they are, right? It's all there. And just getting that right from the start is pretty important, right?
Absolutely. And also acknowledging that, you have to evolve your proposition. You have to look at the data. You have to step back from the data. You have to adjust your strategy. The success of your business is based on your clients and whether you are adding value or providing a service they need. It's simple. And if you can't connect with these clients, and even, whether it's live or digital, you say you need that connection with the client, then the business doesn't happen. You have to, so important to test and to ask and to put in place that feedback.
And speaking of data, there's another part of all of this where data is critically important, which is in fundraising, right? And I know that in recent episodes of the show, we've been digging into crowdfunding quite a bit. And I know that you're in the midst of a crowdfunding campaign on Cedars as we speak, right? Can you tell us about the experience so far? Why did you see it as a strong option? What was the prep work like? Those kinds of things. What do you expect to come from this besides the fingers crossed successful fundraising campaign?
Well, thank you, Pete, for this question, because yes, we are at the start of a live campaign for Infinity Circle on Cedars. Cedars being one of the big crowdfunding platforms. And we are finding the whole experience very eye-opening and very, very interesting. Now, we have just finished Cedars' due diligence on our investment offering. And I must say, I was very surprised to see the robustness of their due diligence. Of course, Infinity Circle is a financial service business, so it has specific regulations. And, I would think that the due diligence on an entity like Infinity Circle is specifically enhanced. But, we went through a 6-week due diligence process where Cedars looked at every single aspect you can imagine, from every assertion we were kind of writing on the landing page on Cedars about each team member, about each advisory board member and what each person was bringing to the team, about past experiences. I mean, I shared a copy of every single one of my contracts since I'm in for the last 20 years, a deep dive into the company's projections, a deep dive into all the legal documents in place, a deep dive into the regulatory position of our offering. I mean, 6 weeks of intense due diligence. So I was a bit surprised because I had heard a lot of comments in the past about crowdfunding platforms saying, how serious is the whole process, how reliable, it's quite a new market, how credible. And after being 16 years in banks, I can tell you, very solid due diligence process. And then to talk about data, we just spoke about data, using data all through the campaign to track progress. So very on point. I mean, they are themselves seen as a fintech business. For young businesses, early stage startups looking for seed investment when you're pre-revenue, it's a fantastic way to source some funding. Sourcing funding for an early stage venture like ours can take several years. It's a very difficult thing to do. And, I've got 20 years of experience. I've got wealthy clients. I've got wealthy contacts. I know the industry, peers in the industry. And still, fundraising for our startup has been a real challenge.
It's never easy when you're at the, the pre-seed seed stage to raise money, right? Even when you got the best connections in the world. And I've seen that recently with other founders. I don't want to speak for seeders, but I think it would be a pretty rigorous process you've gone through. And it sounds like you have gone through a pretty rigorous process.
Absolutely. And we welcomed that process because, again, talking about thinking about the future of your business from the perspective of clients, if and when investment opportunities come on to seeders, with my experience, I can tell you they would have been thoroughly checked and verified. And so I think that gives comfort to investors.
This episode of Money Never Sleeps is sponsored by PAT FinTech, demystifying fintech and digital finance for financial services professionals. PAT FinTech enable financial services professionals to transform their capabilities into the digital age, with dedicated virtual training programs geared towards those that can develop, deliver, and monitor optimally customized user experiences balanced by appropriate governance, control, and oversight. To learn more about PAT FinTech, go to moneyneversleeps.ie/PAT FinTech. And I think one of the other benefits of crowdfunding is that when you have a B2C product, which I think naturally yours is going to be, right? I'd expect that you will have some B2B to C distribution channels as part of your business, right? But when you do crowdfunding for a B2C business, you are creating some fans, right? And creating some initial customers up front and creating that community.
Yeah, it's much more than money, actually. We state on our Seeders campaign that Infinity Circle's vision is to democratize wealth management. Well, where's the best way to start is to let in the crowd in your capital structure.
Yeah, and do it in an efficient way so it only ends up with one line in your cap table, which is the important thing.
Exactly, do it exactly in a nice and tidy way.
Very good. Now, from what I know about wealth management as an adjacency really to my career, leaders in their field need to be extremely social people. I've clearly picked this up from you. You've stated it yourself. And I know that this is going to be one thing that will be quite helpful to you going forward, but has been quite helpful to you in your career. Can you talk about how you've carried over that element of you into the social element of Infinity Circle?
You're right, Pete. The first 15 years of my career were built on my love to socialize and to go out there in the market and to meet my peers, to meet my clients. I built a book from scratch when I was at Barclays Wealth, solely on going out to dinner parties and going to parties and meeting clients and talking to them and being out there. Nothing was done over the phone. I didn't do cold calling. My edge was to meet clients in their world and slowly convert them to becoming clients with all the patience of the world. Some clients I approached and was in contact with for several years before they became my clients. So it is an art and it is an edge. And now building a digital platform, you'd say, well, all that will be lost then because, you're going to do business through a hybrid private market that you're creating. How is that going to work? That is a total shift from what you've been doing so far. And I think actually not, because digital is very important for us, but the way we've designed Infinity Circle is to be a hybrid model, meaning you automate and you digitize your proposition as much as you can, but you don't remove the human component. I am not a great believer in robo advisors or platforms like that. What interests me there is more their AI capabilities. I believe, wealth management, asset management, investing is still very much people interacting. So the way I'm translating this into Infinity Circle, into the model, is, this is not just an analytical educational tool. This is the creation of a private market where you have providers of financial products and you have private clients on the same platform. But the way we're going to add the human touch and the social element is, over time, we are going to introduce clients to each other based on their interest and their behavior on the platform. And all that will be optional. We're not going to impose anything on our clients, not even, initially our clients are onboarded and they're shown as a anonymous entity on the platform. It's not like LinkedIn where you know exactly who your counterparty is. And it's up to the client to determine as he or she gets to know the platform and trust the environment and sees that it's a cybersecurity secure environment, it's an environment that's respecting regulation. As and when they feel comfortable, they can then decide whether they want to disclose their identity or not. And then as they start investing or demonstrating interest in specific types of deals or specific type of investments, we can then give them the ability to meet people who have similar interests, and even to the point where we can also pool clients together for investments, whereby, for instance, the entry ticket to invest is very high, and the clients perhaps would need to be teamed up as 10 investors to enter an allocation.
Get a syndicate going, yeah.
Exactly. It's wealth management meets social media. I'm sure that some people would hate me using that analogy, but we want to have a social component to the platform. We believe that's very important. And I saw it over the years, because over the years when I was a banker in big banks, I'd be called up by my clients as much about, specific investments and metrics and returns and all the very fundamentals of wealth management, as much for that as for, could you introduce me to someone in your book of clients who's in that industry, or who has that type of experience, or who's based in that market that I'm wishing to enter with their own business. The connection and the need for knowledge and connection from an investment point of view is very important. And that couldn't be delivered in banks.
Oh, absolutely. You're right. And I keep thinking about my great Uncle Joe back in the 80s, getting his friends together, going through the stock pages, right, in the newspaper, because that's all you could do back in the day. I mean, it was the beginnings of CNN. There was a financial news network or an FN or something like that way back then. But, these guys just really enjoyed getting together with the newspapers, and they had some sizable chunk of money to invest, right? And how do you actually recreate that virtually? And I think that is lost in the way business just operates, the way investing operates. And how do you actually trigger the return of that, and to make it fun again, and make it that you're learning from each other? And I think having a digital platform that can connect people with similar interests, like you said, that it may not be stock pages, it may be things that aren't on the stock pages because they're private deals. Or even on the service provider side, there may be some benefits to creating some connectivity there that can enrich the overall proposition for the end customer as well. So I really like the concept.
The importance of the community. And in fact, 2020 has showed us how important it is for us. I think this was a given, socializing, having communities of interest. We were free to roam and to travel and to go where we wanted to go, the lucky ones. And this year, with all these constraints and the epidemic and the lockdowns and all of that, I think most of us can agree that we realize the importance of being connected to the right people, of having a sense of community, of being part of a community, sourcing opportunities through these communities. Is not a new idea, Just imagine, the Rotary clubs and the hundreds of clubs around the world that do just that. They create a platform where people can meet and together generate opportunities. Being client-centric I know it's a term that's used everywhere in the industry and has been for a long time, but actually really basing your proposition on the user, on the client, empowering the client. The sense of community, I think, very important. And the old and the new, you referred to, the fundamentals of asset management and wealth management, but the new being done in such a way that from the comfort of your home, anywhere, anytime, when you travel, on your iPhone, on your laptop, that's a gift now.
And making it accessible for people. And when I say accessible, it's on your phone, or it's like you said, it's anywhere in the world where you want to be, but it is it needs to be simple and understandable and easy to execute. Shifting gears a little bit, can you maybe share a story about the most helpful person in your journey so far with Infinity Circle, if you can identify one?
Oh, that's a very interesting question, Pete. And I would tend to answer in line with what I've just said, is actually the most, I can't really pinpoint one person, but the most helpful people in the journey so far have been our clients and have been our early stage investors who, understood the vision and have been supportive both in their time and their money, and believe and understand the vision. I think at the start, if you get a sense that your close network is supportive, is there, and gets what you're trying to do, there's no bigger help than that.
Yeah, that's so true. And I kind of thought you might be saying that, because it's those relationships with clients, early investors, are absolutely critical to getting it right. So excellent. When you think about the future, what excites you? And is there something that you think you might want to learn more about in that context?
So what excites me now is actually launching the platform, which will happen in next year, and shaping it on our clients' needs and actions and their behavior on the platform. So, and seeing really the proposition take a life of its own and adding value to, we are hoping, a new generation of clients and a bigger number of clients. That's what, really excites us. And to be able to share that passion and to be able to, build the wealth management platform of tomorrow, and to leave that legacy, to give meaning to my 20 years in the industry, and to make accessible all that experience to the biggest number possible of people around the world.
That is a brilliant point, because I kind of feel some of that the same way in the industry that I left behind, right? Is that all those years and that experience in that industry, and for the most part, except for one startup I work with, I've kind of left it behind, right? And I do feel kind of guilty sometimes that I have left it behind with all that experience that I have, but I've moved on to something else. But you are truly taking all that experience and you are bringing people to the next phase, right? Which is fantastic.
I'm hoping that I'm sharing everything that I've experienced, that I'll have that Infinity Circle will be the platform where myself and the team, I mean, I'm talking about myself, but we're already 11 people at Infinity Circle, and we're meeting new potential team members, and thanks even to our campaign on Seeders, we're approached by a younger generation of asset managers who are interested to be part of the team. So
yeah, that is a great recruitment tool, that's fantastic. And network creation tool, right? So there's a method to the madness here, is what I'm feeling, which is really encouraging. Last question. What is something that people wouldn't expect to know about Elisabeth Dana?
ooh. I think you got me there.
Really? You know what we typically get from people that have a long pause and say they've got me, is that they're a very private person and not people wouldn't expect to know that much about me. My co-host Owen, who is not recording with us today, obviously, his favorite story is that he was a lifeguard when he was younger, but he didn't know how to swim. So, a few confessions there. Mine is that I know how to read and talk backwards. I won't get into that story. But if I really do have you on that one, and you can't think of anything even slightly unknown to share, then that is perfectly fine. I'm not gonna push you on that one.
Well, thank you, Pete. I think we'll leave that one for the next episode.
That's what I was thinking. I would love to check back in with you after the campaign and after, fingers crossed, like I said, it's successful and you get things moving in terms of getting this to market. So best of luck with that. Really, thank you for coming on to the show today, Elisabeth. It's been fantastic.
Thank you for having us. A pleasure to be here today. Thank you, Pete.
Thank you. That does it for this week, folks, and thanks to Elisabeth for opening up her mind to help us figure out why she does what she does. Links and show notes for this episode are on moneyneversleeps.ie, including a link to Infinity Circle's crowdfunding campaign on Cedars, so check us out online. Also, you can subscribe to our Money Never Sleeps newsletter at moneyneversleeps.substack.com. If you're enjoying Money Never Sleeps and want to see it continue, make sure you hop on over to Apple Podcasts and give us a 5-star review. And don't forget Conan Brophy from Create Sound. He mixes and edits each episode for us and is an excellent media man to get in touch with when you're thinking about launching your own podcast. As for me, I help startups get their products to market, get customers, and finance their vision. You can find me on LinkedIn, Twitter, or at norioventures.com. And you can follow Owen Fitzgerald on Twitter at OwenFitzgerald9. Finally, till next time, thanks for listening. See ya!